For the cost of a couple of fast food meals, you can change your life at the PM 360 seminar. Hit that button, 360.pmradio.org. Sign up. I'm giving you 2 books on project management, one to equip you with the understanding, the other to equip you with how to navigate the marketplace, and I'm also going to give you 4 hours of solid coaching along with 10 other awesome project managers. You don't want to miss it. Join, and I'll see you in the program. Let's jump into today's session. Today we're going to take a look at PMBOK Guide 7th edition. The PMBOK Guide 7th edition is becoming more prominent amongst students taking the PMP exam. Over the past week, I've heard from 3 students, and the recurring theme is, I read the 7th edition, I would read the 7th edition as opposed to 6th, which is quite surprising to a lot of people. But the reason is the PMBOK Guide 7th edition is quite humanistic focused. It's broken down into 2 big buckets. The first bucket is what we call the 12 principles of project management. The second bucket is what we call the 8 domains of project management. We call these performance domains because it's all about performing the work. Okay, so let's go through these very succinctly and quickly. Number 1 in the principles, stewardship. And this just says you got to be a respectful, diligent, and caring steward. You got to be concerned about resources entrusted to you, human, equipment, material, all that. And you also need to remember when it comes to compliance, you got to be in compliance. All right. The second one, again, very humanistic, is team. The team principle simply states you've got to create a collaborative project team environment. Whatever you can do to get the team to synergize, to work together, to look at the whole being greater than the sum, that's the mindset. So again, it's servant leadership because you're trying to get people to build community and to work together successfully. Number 3 is, again, a humanistic principle, and it's all about the stakeholders. Stakeholders. A stakeholder is someone who could be impacted by the project, someone who is interested in the project, someone who the project could impact, or someone who thinks the project can impact them. That's a stakeholder. And the principle, it just says, effectively engage with your stakeholders. So all the planning, all the intentionality, you got to do that. Number 4 is a favorite of mine, and it's all about value. You want to focus on value. The summary is, if it's not valuable, don't do it. Only do what is valuable. Cut out the fat, cut out the muda, cut out the waste, be lean and mean. The next one, number 5, is systems thinking. I call it systems thinking. And systems thinking just means you got to see the big picture. The detail is important as well, but you got to see a macro view of how everything comes together. And it's a mindedness. It says recognize, evaluate, and respond to systems interactions. Number 6 is definitely my number 1 because it's my favorite, leadership. My mentor, John Maxwell, he says everything rises and falls on leadership. Your success in project management, it rises and falls on leadership. And this principle just says demonstrate leadership behaviors. Leadership behaviors are those behaviors that work for you when you're influencing. You know, John, he talks about 5 levels of leadership. Position is just the beginning, you know. Position is where you start from, but you got to transcend your authority by title, and you got to earn leadership. It's a very interesting concept. Go look for the book, The 5 Levels of Leadership. Very good book to read. Number 7. Number 7 is all about tailoring. You got to tailor the project processes to what the project needs. Don't use everything that is in the tools and techniques bucket. because you may not need it. Your project may be over in a couple of days or a couple of weeks or even a few months. You may not have to use the entire laundry list of tools that exist in the firm. Don't take a submachine gun to a pea shoot fight. You want to take what is sensible and relevant to the size and the nature of the project. Don't go using a big old Gantt chart if you need to be using a more agile approach. You know what I mean? So that's what tailoring is about. Number 8 is about quality. What is quality? Quality is, in my mind, 4 things. Quality is fitness for use, conformance to requirements, customer satisfaction, and Kaizen. I'll say that one more time. It's fitness for use, conformance to requirements, customer satisfaction, and Kaizen. All right, after quality, we have number 9. Number 9. Let's put number 9 over here. And number 9 is about complexity. Complexity. Now, this principle simply states navigate complexity. What do we mean by navigate complexity? Well, if you remember the Stacy model, the Stacy complexity model, it has requirements on the y-axis and it has technical uncertainty on the x-axis. Your level of uncertainty goes up, right? As it goes up, things become more ambiguous and less clear in terms of scope. In terms of technicality, how you're going to do something, as you begin to move away from the 0 point, you get into more and more complexity. And the idea is that as you move away, you will eventually get into anarchy and chaos. And it's no good trying to manage things like this. But being agile means you're bringing the requirement certainty back into something that is more manageable by doing it in iterations, by breaking the project down into bite-sized chunks, by doing spike work, and by unraveling what you're working on that may seem a little bit unknown. You'll bring your situation into a more manageable state. And this is where Agile thrives. Agile thrives in this kind of environment. We don't want chaos, so we got to get to better clarity in the requirements by breaking it down into smaller pieces, and the technicality as well. As you break the project down, you can better manage it. That's what you do in the world of complexity. You've got to be agile to deal with that state. Number 10. The 10th principle, it just says risk. Optimize risk responses. What does it mean to optimize risk responses? Optimizing risk responses just means you are doing the best possible thing to deal with the risk, whether it's accept, mitigate, transfer, escalate, avoid, or whether it is the positive risks of escalate, share, accept, exploit, enhance. Whatever the case, you are doing the best possible actions to deal with that risk. All right, number 11 is a double whammy. Number 11, we've got adaptability and resilience. And the principle, it just states embrace adaptability and resilience. So we have adaptability. Being adaptable just means being agile, right? And resilience, that's what I call bounce back ability, the ability to bounce back in response to the marketplace conditions, in response to whatever is happening in your environment. All right, we've got just one left, and the final one is change. And it just says enable change to achieve the desired future state. And this is huge, because everything we do in project management is aimed at changing the state of where we are today to where we want to get to tomorrow, right? Your future state is change enabled. You will not get to your future state if you do not enable change. And those are the 12 principles of project management: stewardship, team, stakeholders, value, systems, thinking, leadership, tailoring, quality, complexity, risk, adaptability, and resilience, and change. Those are the 12. So when people talk about the PMP exam having more emphasis on this, or they talk about the CAPM exam having more emphasis on this, this is the stuff they're talking about, okay? I highly advise that you go over these, get them into your psyche for your exam. It will definitely pay off. Next, we're going to talk about the 8 performance domains. I'm curious to know if you have read up these performance domains, and I'm curious to know what you thought about them. Did you feel like they were familiar in some way, or did they seem like brand new? Especially those of you who have been studying PMBOK 6. Well, let's take a look at the performance domains one by one, okay? The first performance domain sounds, again, quite humanistic, and it's simply team. Looks familiar, huh? You got team here, you got team here. But what do we mean by the team performance domain? The team performance domain is the activities that you need to carry out to get the team functioning at its optimum. This is all about the actions taken to synergize. So you need to be wearing a hat of synergizing, of humanistic ideas. You take these principles, especially the stewardship, the team, the stakeholders, the leadership, you take that, and as you work in the project, you do things that will enable the team better function, better synergize. That's what it's all about. And this is why a lot of people who are taking the exam these days, they talk about how the domains and the principle talk, or ideology, or philosophies have helped them on their journey. All right? Number 2, second domain. Again, you put them side by side, there's a lot of similarities in the naming. Okay? We have stakeholders. Now, when you take a look at the principle is more like the philosophy and the mindset. The domains are more like the actions. For example, you got to build a team. You got to send them for training. You got to have a team charter or a team contract. You got to be aware of diversity and inclusion. You see, the principle, the mindset, the domains, the things you need to do. When it comes to stakeholders, there's certain actions, okay? The certain actions we're talking about things like a stakeholder register, being intentional in getting your stakeholder register together, being intentional about a stakeholder engagement plan, being intentional about engaging your stakeholders and having steps to do that, okay? The principle is just one thing, the domains, the actions, the activities, okay? All right, the next domain is called development approach and life cycle. Development approach and life cycle. It's a bit of a mouthful, but this is what this talks about. This talks about understanding the nature of work you're doing. If you're working on something that is greenfield and emergent and never been done before, then it makes sense to have a more agile development approach. Or if you're working on something that requires a lot of testing and configuration to get it right, then a more iterative approach might work, where you do not release anything until you get to that iteration, that prototype that is approved, then you can produce the final thing. You see, there's a difference between agile and iterative and predictive, right? And incremental. These are all talked about in the book. Incremental does not have a whole lot of change. It's like a well-defined product, still within reason, it can change, but compared to an agile approach, your deliverable in incremental does not change as much. This is covered very well in the Agile Practice Guide, and I would recommend that reading as well. All right, let's go to number 4. Number 4 is a no-brainer because everybody knows we got to do this, right? If we fail to plan, then we're planning to fail, right? So we got to plan. You got to plan a lot of things. You got to plan schedule and cost and scope and quality, resources, communications, risk, procurement, stakeholder management. You got to plan how to measure, what to measure, right? Your KPIs. There's so many dimensions to planning. So this performance domain, it deals with planning across all the spheres of project management. Next is a project work performance domain. The project work performance domain is concerned majorly with activities and functions that are associated with establishing project processes to learn as the work is being done and ultimately to complete the project work. Project communications and engagement, thinking about physical resources, everything that needs to be done to ensure the work is progressing as planned, monitoring the work, monitoring changes, and integration work, interactions with other performance domains. Okay, we got just 3 left, so we're doing quite well. Number 6 is delivery. And delivery is all about the disbursement of whatever you've been working on. You know, from the word deliverable, delivery, it's delivering what has been done, right? The deliverable, the ultimate delivery of what has been done. You could deliver in increments, you could deliver one time, but there's an intentionality that needs to happen when it comes to delivering of the work that has been done. Okay? Number 7, measurement. This is one of my favorites, if not my favorite, in the 7th edition, because I believe this gave some insights that were not previously looked at in other PMBOK guides. When we talk about measurement, we're talking about KPIs, but there's also some very interesting conversation here in this section about vanity metrics, you know, just measuring for measuring's sake. There's also some sensitivity around the concept of leading indicators and lagging indicators. And sometimes you need to just ask yourself, do we really need that metric? What good is that measurement doing? And if the measurement is not offering real value when and how it's meant to be, you may not want to measure that thing. You know, on a lot of projects, people have these big old dashboards, red, yellow, green, traffic lights. Ain't nobody getting no value from those things. Why are they using them? Because they've always used them. Wrong answer. Throw it out. Don't do it. That's what the measurement domain is all about. Okay? You want to make sure the metrics and the measurements are sensible. They're offering value. If you're taking hours and hours in your week as a project manager creating these dashboards and these reports, don't just keep doing it because we've always done it that way. No, throw them out. Throw them out and do something new. How about less metrics? How about metrics that matter, huh? That's the business case for that one. All right, let's talk about the final one. The final one is uncertainty. Uncertainty. And when we think about uncertainty, we've got to think about system uncertainty, we've got to think about ambiguity, we've got to think about system behavior, we've got to think about human behavior. There's so many elements. But uncertainty, you could just equate it to a bunch of things. You got risk, you got human beings, you got systems, and uncertain events are triggered by emergent aspects of the project, things that you didn't think of before that are just unfolding before you. Or human behavior that you thought you knew how they would react, or they react differently, or you thought you knew how the systems, when you integrate the systems, you get something totally different. That's why we need to think about uncertainty. The way to deal with uncertainty, my friends, is to break things down into bite-sized chunks. It is to be more agile than ever before. It is to be aware that you cannot always predict human behavior and system behavior, and you cannot always control and predict all the risks. You cannot see in a crystal ball. There's actually a software called Crystal Ball, but ain't no crystal ball predicting the risk that you could find on every project. So you need to come correct with these mindsets, my friends, with the propensity to keep unraveling the project's uncertainty in increments. The best way to deal with risks is being agile, because Agile is a risk coping mechanism. It's an uncertainty coping mechanism. So my friends, let's take a look at the grand view of everything we've been talking about for the past number of minutes. For those of you who just come in, I really want you to understand we're talking about PMBOK 7, because PMBOK 6, even though it has been transformed in the Process Groups of Practice Guide, this stuff is what the new exam is made of. Do you get what I'm saying? So we have the 12 principles and we have the 8 performance domains. Now, for those of you who are still on the fence as far as reading the 7th edition, I'm going to put a couple of PDF links so that you can go straight to the summaries that I have here. The first link is tinyurl.com/Phil PMBOK 7. So Phil P7. You get that? tinyurl.com/Phil P7. You're going to get the 12 principles PDF from there. The second link that I want you to go to is tinyurl.com/Phil PD7. D for domains. Okay? If you go to these two hot links, tinyurl.com/Phil P7, tinyurl.com/Phil with 2 L's PD7, you are going to be able to summarize these. I know lots of you have been for training on the 6th, but you need to be aware of the dialogue in the 7th. If you've got enough time before your exam, I would highly recommend you read the actual book, especially if you haven't read the 6th. Read the 7th, okay? Secondly, for those of you that have read the 6th, and you're like, well, Phil, I don't have time for that now. It's already far gone. I want to give you some further clarity, okay? I'm going to show you where the treasure is buried for all of these. For those of you who have read the 6th edition, when it comes to stewardship, team, and stakeholders, there are certain chapters I would recommend that you think about more. For stewardship, this is really integration, right? This is really the integration section of PMBOK 6. Stewardship. Stewardship is also resources, R-E-S, okay? When it comes to team, of course, you know this is really RES, resources in PMBOK 6. Stakeholders is more the stakeholder chapter, which is chapter 13. All right, so integration is chapter 4, resources is chapter 9, all right, in 6th edition. Value, systems thinking, this is more chapter 4 of integration, okay. This could also be a little bit of chapter 7, which is on cost, okay. When it comes to leadership, this is more chapter 9. Tailoring is more chapter 4, integration. Quality is exactly what you see, chapter 8, which is on quality. Complexity, risk, and a little bit of adaptability and resilience. This is really more of chapter 11 in PMBOK 6. And change is more like chapter 4. Okay, and all the other chapters have some elements of change. So we have micro change, we have macro change, but I really go more to integration for that understanding. When it comes to these performance domains, I have a video that shows the breakdown of how these domains should be perceived. So very quickly, team again, is chapter 9 and PMBOK 6. Stakeholders is chapter 13, pretty much. Development approach and life cycle is chapter 4. Maybe a little bit of chapter 1 in the preamble in 6th edition. Planning is just that, everything in planning. Project work is pretty much a bit of direct to manage project work, which is chapter 4. It's a little bit of scope, which is chapter 5. And it's a little bit of the aspect of quality, which is chapter 7. Okay? Delivery is part validate scope, part close project or phase, part direct to manage project work. So you've got a combination of 4 and 7. I should say 4 and chapter 4 and chapter 5 as far as that delivery is concerned, and chapter 8. Measurement is all throughout because we have monitoring and controlling for all those knowledge areas. So I just say this is pretty much all, but we have chapter 4 when it comes to monitor and control project work, which that maps to very nicely. And uncertainty is more like chapter 11 on risk. All right, so that's it, my friends. That wraps it up. I hope you found it to be useful. Remember, if you're looking to get certified and you kind of like this breakdown, you want to bookmark it, hit like, bookmark, follow the channel, and when there are more videos like this, you get notified. All right, thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video.